Well, hey everybody, Matt here. Welcome to the Photo Makeover episode number 1, the very first one. Basically, I'm gonna take your photos, edit them on here by whatever means necessary. So I'm not restricting myself to any apps. I'm gonna use whatever I would do for a photo or my photo, I'm gonna use what I would use normally for, okay? A couple things before we get started. So if you're wondering how to submit photos for this, I will eventually open it up. Right now, I just kind of went out to my customers, so because they pay the bills. So the series is free to watch. But I just went out to my customers first. I got a bunch of photos, so I'm gonna work through a few batches of those first, and then I'll make sure I post information on how to get your photos in here. Number 2, sit back, enjoy. Let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna work through 3 photos in this video, kind of all different genres of photography here. First one here, we got a great overlook. Nice photo, nice composition. I love all the little triangular shapes here. They really pull people into the photo. Got some nice lighting going on in the background here. So, as I look at it, I'm thinking, initial thoughts, a little bit hazy back here. We'll take care of that. First thing I would do in Lightroom is close the histogram because I don't use it. Let's warm it up a little bit, quite a bit, I guess. Whites and blacks, just Option or Alt click. And click on the whites, drag it over to the right, Option or Alt click on blacks, drag it over to the left. And that's looking pretty good. Maybe open up some of the shadows a bit. We'll scroll down here. Let's see here, detail. So let's do some sharpening here. I'm just gonna zoom into 100%, which is kind of right in the middle of the photo here. I'm gonna crank up my amount slider to quite a bit. I mean, anything, it's up to 103. So if you know my sharpening thoughts, here's my sharpening thoughts. My sharpening thoughts are actually pretty simple, which is why I don't talk about them a lot in my video. If you're not gonna print it, don't worry about it that much, all right? You're generally not gonna put a huge version of your photo on the web for somebody to zoom in and pixel peep on. They're gonna look at it on their screen. They're not gonna get to zoom in the photo. So what I'll usually do is I will zoom in. I'll go into about 100%. I'll crank up the amount slider until it looks sharp, until, that's before, that's after. It looks nice. Now, if I crank up the amount slider and I crank up the detail slider and this is bad, all right? This is what over sharpening looks like. And you kind of have to start to develop an eye for what over sharpening looks like. But that gives you a good idea of what it starts to look like there. So I'm just gonna put it on the web. I'm not gonna sweat it that much. A little bit of sharpness to kind of just take care of some soft edges. I'm gonna be done with it. Now, if I'm gonna print it, that's maybe where I'll do a little bit of over sharpening. What's over sharpening? I'll crank up the amount slider, I'll come down here, crank up the detail a little bit. Radius maybe 1.2, 1.3. Take a look. That's before, that's after. I can see some edges. I can kind of tell I did some sharpening. Looks a little bit maybe too sharp. Well, your printing is going to start to smooth those edges out a little bit. Now, how do you know how much? Here's the kicker, is you have to do it. There's no magic formula to this one. Every photo is gonna hold sharpening a little bit different. Portraits, landscape, travel, wildlife, everything. The size of the photo matters, and you have to start to kind of understand a little bit about what over sharpening looks like and then print. And as you do that a few times, you'll start to get a feel like, you know what, you're gonna print and you're gonna look at it and you're like, I can't even tell that I sharpened this thing. Maybe push it a little bit more next time. One time you're gonna print, you're like, wow, I sharpened it way too much. Push it a little bit less next time. But there's really no substitute other than doing it when it comes to this stuff. But there's a general guideline. Web, don't worry about that much. Print, worry about it a little bit, but worry about the print more. I think I'm gonna push this pretty high. Radius, I usually, for detailed photos, I usually bring that down a little bit lower, below 1, and then detail, I'll crank that up basically until things get too crunchy, and then I'll pull it back a little bit. All right, looking good. Let's back out here, take a look down. What other things? Lens corrections, I have a feeling, it's not a wide angle lens, it looks like it's a zoom lens, so lens corrections aren't gonna do much. I might rotate this around to kind of rotate it. As I look at it, I think I'm gonna crop it in a little bit too. To me, the strong point of the photos in here, I'd love to get rid of all that, but I don't think that's gonna be a good crop for the photo. So I'm gonna crop out some of it, but I'm gonna leave some of it as well. All right. So I think right about there looks pretty good. Let's go take a look at our brush tool. So I'm gonna go to the adjustment brush, and what we're gonna do here is, remember how we said the background looks hazy? Rather than blast the dehaze slider at the whole photo, which I think is gonna make it too contrasty, I'm gonna go over here and crank up dehaze, and then I'm just gonna paint it over the background. So I'm just brushing it in on the parts of the photo that I think are too hazy, not the entire photo. All right, so it's just gonna add a nice amount of contrast back in here to all those places. Looks good, probably too much, so we'll just back off on it. Let's go over here to add new, and instead of dehaze, I'm gonna add a little bit of exposure just into some of the middle area here. Again, that might be a little bit too much, so I'll back off. I'll do new one more time. I'm gonna bring the exposure the other way, and I'm just gonna paint down in this corner, just to take some of the heat off of this area that I really don't wanna draw your attention to, so I'm just gonna try to leave it alone. I'm gonna go in on the water. I'll do new one more time. I'm gonna make it a tiny bit darker. All right, and then I love the color of the water. I'm gonna work with it a little bit here, and I'm just gonna pull a little bit more blue into it. Okay, so if we take a look at our little toggle switch here, we can see that's before, that's after the brush. So just adding a little bit of depth, kind of, just taking some of that haze out of the background there and making it a little bit more contrasty. Overall, I think we're looking good here. Maybe warm it up a little tiny bit more. We could be done. If you're just gonna stick with Lightroom, I think at this point, we could probably be done with the photo. I do have a step, I call it the stylization phase. Sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't. It's not one of those things I have to do on every photo, but a lot of times when I jump into whatever program you're gonna use to style your photos, a lot of times when I jump into there, I get ideas. So I personally use on one effect, so I'm gonna go jump into effects here. And I kind of have an idea that I think I'm gonna go into, there's an urban setting under the presets. So if we take a look over here on the left-hand side and scroll down to urban, there's one called Urban Sun. And so it's one that I go to quite a bit. I think it's way too stylistic for this photo. So we're just gonna pull the opacity, the overall opacity down quite a bit. But I like the feeling that gives. It kind of goes with a warm, hazy type of a feeling. And I kind of dig it for this photo. All right, so we'll hit done. And that's just gonna take a version of the photo back over to Lightroom. So it essentially had to make a copy of it when I left Lightroom. So let's go back to the original one here and click on that. I'm gonna choose reset. Take a look. There is our before photo, and here is our after photo. So before and then after. All right, moving on down the line. Let's take a look at the next one here. So we have dog and cat. I chose this photo for a reason. I'm gonna guess it's not a client photo, because I don't know how best to say this. You didn't set yourself up for art. Because we're in a living room, a family, I don't know where it is, but you got all the wires and everything so we didn't set ourselves up. But I could see how in this photo, if these are your pets, this moment might not happen often. And if it does happen often, your pets are weird. But I'm gonna guess this moment does not happen often. So we wanna make the best out of it. You wanna make a nice picture. So I have some thoughts for you on it. I'm gonna go in here for highlights, kind of pull down the highlights. I'm not gonna do a lot of Lightroom work on this one. Let's go into crop it a little bit, because I think compositionally, there's a lot we can do with it. In fact, if I shot this compositionally, I might go with something. Okay, totally just kidding. I have a cat. I don't know how else to say it. Just joking around. I got a cat. I didn't want a cat. Believe it or not, as fate would have it, you know, when you get a pet that you don't want, guess who the pet won't ever leave alone, and that's me. But my cat and I actually have a very good understanding, and that understanding is I get to pet it and feed it and give it water whenever it wants, which is about the understanding I think like all cats have. Anyway, let's jump back in here. We do want to crop this one. We're gonna crop it in. And what I would say is, you know, stop, you know, you're not really gonna go for the perfect framing here. What we're really gonna try to do is reduce the clutter in that background, okay? Now, I said I wasn't gonna do a lot of Lightroom work to me. This one is, to me, this one's kind of like Photoshop to the rescue. So we'll go photo edit in and we'll jump over here to Photoshop. Once we get there, what I wanna do is I'm gonna do a fake blur on the background here. And you know, I don't know that I would do this on all photos because it does take a little bit of extra work. But if these are your pets and you really want to salvage this shot, I think there's something. And we love our pets, so I can understand if you really want to take this to the next level, maybe print it really big and hang it on your wall. So let's go grab. In fact, we're going to go straight up here to the select and mask area. And I'm gonna change my overlay to black. In fact, no, let's try white. I think white might work better, okay? And we're gonna take the topmost tool, which is your quick selection brush, and we're just gonna start brushing on the background here, okay? Does a pretty good job, detects the edges, looking good. And it's not perfect. If you kind of miss part of it, hold down your Option or Alt key and you can just paint along some of those areas and bring them back in like so. And let's see here, we'll go down next to the Refine Edge brush. And if I see an edge like, you know, kind of the top here where there's a lot of contrast, just kind of brush over those areas and it'll just help smooth into the background and smooth that transition a little bit. And then we could also increase our radius to about, you know, 3 or 4 pixels, and that will help smooth those edges as well, okay? So at this point, all I'm gonna do is click OK. It's gonna give me a selection. All right, and you can see I kind of missed a couple of areas, so you'd probably want to take a little bit more time than I did. And let's just go back in here and see if we can add to the selection. And get any little spots that we happen to miss in there. And if you have to, Option or Alt click and that'll subtract from it, as you could see there. So here's where we're gonna get a little bit tricky. I'm gonna press Command or Control J. And that's gonna take that selection and it's gonna pop it up onto its own layer, all right? And I'm gonna apply a blur to this. But before I do that, I have to reselect this layer. So I'm gonna Command or Control click on it, because what that does is that'll make sure the blur doesn't go outside of these selection edges that you see here. So we're gonna go up here to the filter menu. We're gonna go down to Blur Gallery to Field Blur. And I'm just gonna start to crank this up. Now, I'm not gonna crank it up to like, you know, it looks like I shot it at like f.2. I'm gonna pull it back to a realistic, semi-realistic level, just enough to take your attention off of what's going on back there. All right, it's not, you know, if we're thinking I'm gonna pixel peep and I'm like, why isn't this blurry, but this is back here blurry? If you're in that zone, then you're never gonna get this right, because it's gonna be near impossible to make blur up here and make it look realistic. But all I wanna do is just pull some of that attention off the background there, all right? So I think that'll do pretty good. Click OK, we got our blur. Deselect. Now, if this were me, and it is, I'm gonna press Option, Command, Shift, and the letter E. And that just merged everything up onto one layer there. And this one's a little bit typical for pet photos, but again, I'm assuming these are your pets. That's why I picked this photo. I'm assuming these are your pets. I'm assuming this photo means something to you. And maybe you want to, you maybe want to do a large print, like a canvas wrap, and hang that on your wall. There's a little trick that you can do, especially considering we did some Photoshop trickery on the background there. There's a little trick that you can do to hide your tracks, and that is go to the filter menu, go down here to Stylize, and go to Oil Paint. And if you're gonna do a canvas wrap, just go full artistic with it. Turn on the oil paint filter and it starts to look like a painting. All right, I'll kind of zoom in a little bit there for you, but you could see some of the texture. It'll start to look like a painting, and then the really nice part is it really kind of hides what's back there. You know, you can't even see it at all, and especially if you get a little bit more stylistic with this. There's actually quite a bit that you can do, and I see a lot of people that do their pet photos that way, especially if you're going to print that onto a canvas or a gallery wrap or some sort. I think it would hold that effect pretty well. Okay, so you could go that way. I'm going to cancel out of there. Let's just leave it here. We'll go File, Save. That's going to bring us back over into Lightroom. So now don't forget we got our copy. Only thing I would do here is maybe throw a vignette on top of it. If I do a full vignette, it's gonna start to darken the dog. So we'll just go over here and we'll do the exposure slider. We'll bring that negative. So I'm using the radial filter in Lightroom, negative exposure, and I'm just gonna kind of pop a little spotlight right on the two of them there. All right, and take a look. That's before. That's after. So that kind of helps. You can even feather it a little bit more. Close that. Let's take a look. Got our original photo, hit reset. That's our original. That's our after. So there's the before and there is the after. One more. Love this photo. So many things I love about this photo. Just great eye, great vantage point, you know, just it's getting above and catching it. Compositionally it works. It just flows through the photo. So many nice things about the photo. Love the color. It's, you know, super easy to edit as well. I think we do whites and blacks, Option or Alt click, gets us a little bit of contrast. I'm leaving the color alone. I'm not going to warm it. I'm not going to cool it. I think it looks great. Open up the shadows a bit here. A little bit of clarity. Come down here to the detail panel. Again, zoom in, pull that back. So what I'm gonna look out for is adding texture to the skin, and I can pull that back with some masking. So I don't get that texture onto the skin there. I think if we throw a vignette on this, you're gonna see a huge difference. Look at that. Huge. Before, after. And then I'm gonna grab my brush. I'm gonna grab my brush, increase the exposure, and I'm just gonna start to paint in on some of the highlights. Not highlight like exposure highlights, but some of the highlights in the photo. You know, bring out the people in the photo a little bit here. Got the fish. Baskets, got lots of detail in there. Some baskets up here, baskets everywhere. There we go. Same thing over here. Okay. Looking good. I might push my vignette a little bit darker. Now, if we wanted to go a little bit more stylistic with this, again, you know, I think the purist in someone can say stop here and perfectly fine. You know, this is not a bad place to stop. If you want to go a little bit more stylistic, if you want to get picky, we could jump over into Photoshop. And we could use our spot healing brush just to get rid of a couple little edge distractions that we have here. So hit J for your spot healing brush. And, you know, if we want to get rid of some, again, I'm being really picky here. I don't even know that I would normally do this to the photo, but I'm just kind of showing you a couple possibilities for it. Especially if you're going to print it and mat it, some of these edges could go away. Just imagine a mat around that, and I kind of want to clean things up a little bit. So we have that option. And then if we really want to go stylistic, we could jump into On1 effects or whatever you're going to use to style your photos. Because I think presets can offer some different options for this. And honestly, what I do is I kind of look at the various presets, and that's exactly how I found this one. Which was, as I'm looking through here, like I kind of thought the dupe one, I don't know why it's showing a weird thumbnail over there, but I thought the dupe one looked pretty cool. Way too contrasty, which I can pull back. That's the dynamic contrast adding here. But I do like to add a little bit of contrast. And then you'll see it's got a black and white, which is gonna give a little bit of a kind of a muted type of a feel to the photo, which I actually kind of like. So let's go ahead. If you hit the backslash key, it's subtle before, after, but I think it makes an impact. So we'll hit done. And that's gonna bring us back into Photoshop, because that's where I came from, because I did some Photoshop work. But from here, you could also, if I went into on one from Lightroom, it'd be simple. But I'm just gonna hit save from here. And when you look back over into Lightroom, just like always, it will have created a copy. So we'll go to our original, hit reset. There is our before and there is our after. So before and after. Great photo. I really like, I love that photo. So there's so many nice things compositionally and just interesting going on. As I look at it again, you know what? I'm going with a little bit of a harsher vignette. Nothing saying that you can't do it once you're back in here. And I think that really tames the edges and brings you into the photo a little bit more. So again, that's before and that's after. Folks, thank you so much for tuning into this very, very first episode. Really appreciate it. Now, somewhere on the screen, because I don't do this stuff, my wife is in charge of making things pop up on the screen. Somewhere on here, I think she's gonna pop up a place for you to subscribe for more videos. I do lots of stuff, and I wanna just make sure that you see it. So if you just click on there, you'll get lots of free tips and videos and all kinds of fun stuff. Thanks so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.